Thanks so much, Roger, and thanks to all for attending. Greetings from sunny Cleveland. Um, the topic, I need to acknowledge Roger for this. He suggested um, it would be timely for a discussion about the not only the state of flame retardant research in the U.S., and I'll touch on that briefly, but also about how it's funded, how universities work in terms of funding, and perhaps a discussion of the applied versus basic research spectrum. So I'm going to try to cover all of that and conclude with a few, call them recommendations for groups like PINFA to consider in terms of getting more attention and more funding in this broad area of flame retardant research. So my plan is to end just about noontime to leave plenty of time for an interactive question and answer session. So thanks also to Debbie and Jose. So to this audience, I don't need to say very much except in terms of fire and consequences, still fires can be dramatic and very devastating in terms of loss of life. Close to home here in Collinwood, Ohio in 1908, about 140 kids. They were second, third graders mostly were killed in a fire. And we see Grenfell Tower in London only 7 years ago. There are some interesting contrast between Lakeview School over a century ago in Grenfell. The the building codes and egress and exit signs and sprinklers and all of that were not very much in effect back over a century ago. Today, there's much greater in terms of safety protocols about getting out of a burning building, but at the same time, we're in an environment where instead of brick and concrete and steel exclusively for building, there's a lot of plastics, not only in construction but also upholstery and furniture and such things. So if we go to the next slide, there's a very interesting YouTube video from UL that compares what's called natural and synthetic furnishings, natural being things like wood, wool, for instance, synthetics, urethane, foam, cushions, polyester, draperies, polypropylene carpets, things like that. And the time to flash over comparing a synthetic versus natural system is considerable. You've got about 25 minutes to get out of a burning room with, quote, natural materials and less than 5 minutes with synthetic. So there's a huge need for flame retardation of polymeric materials. Next slide. So what I thought I would do for starters, we're going to talk about research, and these quadrants are somewhat useful in an explanatory sense. And when I think about research, I've been an academic all my life. I'm starting my 45th year in higher education this coming fall. Pure basic research, that's a nod to Niels Bohr, who really launched the quantum model of atomic structure. Pure basic research, I'm a university professor. I have the privilege of doing pure basic research. Industry has focused primarily on the rightmost two quadrants, so-called Pasteur quadrant, use-inspired basic research. For example, Bell Labs, some people say, well, Bell Labs used to do very basic research, and there's been some debate about that. The development of the first transistor circa 1947 may offer the impression that this came out of very fundamental pure basic research, the Bohr quadrant, but actually it was very much driven by a need to replace vacuum tubes, given the projected growth in communications technology and demand in that sector. So really, a place like Bell Labs, Roger was at GE Plastics for a number of years, and many of you have had some long and productive industry careers. Use-inspired basic research has been a driver. The Edison quadrant, Edison, it's claimed, didn't really care about discovering anything new. He would take concepts from here and there and merge them together in creative ways. And so that's the so-called Edison quadrant. Next slide. So industry. And Roger perhaps can comment on this later, but if you look at Bell Labs, for instance, the divestiture was, I believe, 1984. Bell Labs could justify a long-term view to research, even though it can be argued it was use-driven, not pure in the sense of, without attention to applications. But without the access to monopolies and vertical integration, Bell Labs or the Bell system, telephones, telephone components, the wires connecting, all of us back in those days, that was a monopoly, and it no longer had the opportunity as of 1984. So now, I don't need to really discuss these points in any great detail. We'll just look at them here. But global competition has led to less of an emphasis on the long-term use-driven research. There's still research, of course, in industry. Elite corporate labs, GE CR&D, Bell Labs, etc. We've seen a decline in both the headcount and the long-term focus, and I would argue we're seeing less corporate participation. The first editor of the high-quality ACS journal Macromolecules was at Bell Labs. We see less and less participation, and that's just the current situation. Next slide. So from my side, in talking a lot to industry over a long time, what does industry want from us in academia? Make sure our students are strong in fundamentals, because fundamentals don't change. The laws of thermodynamics, Newton's laws of motion, and things like that still rule, of course. Maybe ask questions that only we should ask in the basic research area. Having said that, there's an appeal for us in higher education to accelerate translation, meaning the application of research in the commercial sector, listen better to industry needs, be more interdisciplinary, and given this global talent opportunity for hiring, make sure our students are professionally attuned. In addition to, so the message is deep technical education is not enough anymore. One needs some business acumen, not necessarily an MBA on top of a bachelor's degree, but really some understanding of project management and finance and accounting and things like Six Sigma. And Roger's spoken to my students annually about topics like that. Next slide. So here's a snapshot. I hope I didn't leave anyone out. I consulted with a few individuals about where the nexus of fire-related research is in the US, and I highlight my alma mater, WPI. I graduated long before they started the fire protection engineering program. Maryland also has that, very comprehensive. There's some certainly attention to flammability of materials, but it's much broader, and I'll comment on that in the next slide. Some of these other institutions may have one or a small group of individuals, professors and research groups. At Case Western, it's myself, Professor Yating Liao in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, and my colleague Hatsuo Ishida here in Macromolecular Science and Engineering. So there's a group of three. Other places also have small, but I would argue significant activities. So this is sort of the landscape. Next slide. If we look at WPI from their website, here are bulleted topics. So fire and materials, well, that's certainly on the list, but fire systems, firefighter safety, etc., human behavior. So these kinds of programs tend to be much broader than the interest of the group on the line here, perhaps, and Pinfa. Maryland also has a significant program, materials flammability as part of it, but again, very broad simulation, emerging hazards, evacuation analysis, things like that. So the other universities on the previous slide tend to be much narrower in terms of scope because they're smaller. We don't have, for example, a degree program or any kind of department here at Case Western, but are small, but I think a significant and very capable effort is focused on fire dynamics and flammability of polymers. Next slide. I had a chat with Alex Morgan. He can't join, but I appreciated his feedback and want to call out the University of Dayton and the Dayton Research Institute, University of Dayton Research Institute for a very significant effort as well. Next slide. So in thinking about the players in academia and broad topics, I'll pick four here: additives and coatings, fire dynamics, and wildfires. Additives and coatings, where I think our audience gravitates, tends to be the recipient of rather limited government funding. There seems to be more, sometimes significantly more, in fire dynamics, really understanding the growth, the spread of fires, and all the details. Wildfires are certainly emerging on the horizon. It's about that season. I remember just about a year ago, the sky here in Cleveland midday was orange because of the smoke from wildfires in Canada. So look at the asterisk. Some reasons for limited government funding. Well, I think it would be hard to go to our National Science Foundation with a proposal because I'm afraid it wouldn't be the topic and what would be proposed would not be viewed as, quote, basic enough. There are, in addition to efficacy, let's say, of additives and coatings in fire situations, more and more in the news is environmental aspects of flame retardants and toxicological issues. And some people would argue, well, that should be, if a group is looking at a new additive package, say new gas phase fire retardants to compete with halogenated compounds, for instance, well, there should be an environmental piece, and a lot of agencies like NSF may say that's not really us. Should be more industry driven is something I hear. One thing Alex told me last week when we chatted, he said there's an unfortunate attitude in the fire area of being more reactive than proactive, meaning pretty simply that disasters catalyze attention and perhaps funding, but there's not a lot of work that sort of in and of itself, because of motivations around public safety emerge, and there's more funding in the EU in general in this area of additives and coatings. Next slide. So, and back to the toxicological issue. This is a paper from a couple of years ago written by Alex, and uh, there's a public attitude that fire retardant chemicals do not work and they're toxic. And his paper, which I highly recommend, is well worth reading, but it does speak to this point. There's a lot of misinformation out there, which is not doing us, the collective us, any favors. Next slide. So what I like to do now is spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes on how things work here at Case Western. Now, I'm not saying this is a blueprint for every university, but here's how things work here. I, as a professor managing a research group, I have to run it like a small business. I have to make payroll. And so what that means is when I take on a PhD student, I need to have a source of funds, a contract, a research grant from day one. And we need to pay the students, this is graduate students now, PhD students, tuition and stipend. We need some funds for facilities and maybe conference travel, equipment, usage fees, and of course 61% overhead. So in round numbers, if you were to ask me, so what would it take to fund a student on a specific effort for 1 calendar year? My answer would be roughly 125, 130K. That includes 61% overhead, a little bit of my time. If I'm going to be supervising a student in a research project, the university expects that my part of my salary would be paid in that effort, maybe 5% of my academic year salary. One challenge with industry funding is the duration. I mean, PhD students, we need 3 to 4 years of support, and we can cobble together smaller quanta of support as long as the collective support is in an area that one can claim for a thesis. Employment contracts, I mean, my PhD students and I, we would discover something, the university immediately takes ownership, but, and we just had a conversation yesterday with an individual interested in a license. The university will entertain discussions about exclusive or non-exclusive licenses. We need to be able to publish. So we'll respect delays in publication to file IP. And one thing for people in industry on the line, more and more PhD students are becoming interested in internships during their PhD, which I highly encourage. Okay, next slide. I'm going to give you a quick look from my group at a project to give the folks on the line a sense of how this works. Next slide. So we were approached, so intumescent coatings, all of you know generally what these are. These generate a very porous char that acts as a thermal barrier, an oxygen barrier, and they are very, very popular in industry and a lot of applications. Next slide, Debbie. How we started, we were approached by Sherwin-Williams. This is a sustainability play. Boric acid is a common component in intumescent paints. And this was about 2016, 2017 when we got involved. The innovation challenge was to replace boric acid. It's on the REACH list in the EU. It's not a good thing. It has all the nice characteristics about Dehydration, which is an endothermic reaction. It's a weak acid, and that can be useful catalytically. It vitrifies or forms a glassy kind of char, which is strong. And we were challenged to replace that. Next slide. So, and this is not a research talk, so I just mentioned our approach is was to look at polyacrylic acid, which is common in diapers and super absorbent polymers, things like that. Has all the characteristics, well, two of the three characteristics. There's a dehydration reaction. It's a weak acid, but it doesn't vitrify to form a strong char. It basically disappears on burning. However, we've got that weakly acidic acid group that can be neutralized with alkali metal ions, sodium, potassium, alkaline earth, cations, calcium, magnesium. And in fact, you can make something useful there. And next slide. So how this works, we need to publish, and we did. James Covello, one of the co-authors, is on the line. And we also have a joint patent filing with the researchers at Sherwin-Williams. Next slide. This is continuing. So again, I just want to point out that that seed funding led to more substantial funding from the company. We're grateful for that. We always give attention to the concern about intellectual property. So we will file it. How it works here is probably how it works at most places, including most industries. Internal invention disclosure, that goes to our technology transfer office. The first step is a provisional patent application, buys us 12 months to file a full application, and then these publish after 18 months. So you see in both of these cases, we started moving to tannic acid. We had a decent success with polyacrylic acid, but then thinking more about sustainability, went to tannic acid. One of the components was melamine, our most recent paper that James led, you see bottom left. We can take melamine out, and this still works well. So anyway, that's the work continues to this day. I see it's 11:55 Cleveland time, so this is probably, I think we're on track. Let's go to the next slide. And what I want to do for the remaining 4 or 5 minutes is based on this very brief, broad look at applied versus basic research and how we work with industry. And I don't think the little story I told you was not in broad strokes considerably different at other academic institutions. I have 3 recommendations to offer regarding funding, increased funding in the flame retardant area. So next slide. Number 1 might be for us, industry and academia, to consider an NSF program. It's called the IUCRC, and the acronym is Industry University Cooperative Research Centers. So the NSF has a funding mechanism where universities are the lead. A university would apply and would have industry partners hand in hand. If awarded funding, the university would receive funds from the NSF for program management, participating industries. I believe the round numbers are $50K per year as a fee. It is early stage pre-competitive, so multiple companies can participate, and there are walls to erect to protect individual companies' IP. But this turns out to be I think, a very possible mechanism for us collectively to consider. There actually is an IUCRC at Case Western. If you Google that acronym in Case Western, you'll you'll find one led by a colleague of mine in material science and engineering, Roger French, which has a focus on reliability of solar cells, and it's broader than that, but that essentially is the focus. So this could be a mechanism, and quite frankly, I would be interested in an offline dialogue with any participants on the call here. Next slide. So a second one is maybe to not to go beyond this NSF program. There's you write a proposal. It's probably 6 to 8 months before you hear back. It's been reviewed, and sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And I'd like to suggest that Pinfa, other trade organizations, and several industries conspire, quote, to fund activities, use-inspired basic research. So we're up in that pastor's quadrant, and I would argue that's been historically where industry has played, and certainly universities like ours are quite active. We also, of course, do basic research, but use-inspired basic research is and that Sherwin-Williams example is one little microcosm of that. What would be desirable is 1 year minimum duration projects that are peer-reviewed anonymously and impartially, milestone-driven progress, and then the possibility of renewal funding if the work is promising. So this would be something rather independent of any government agency, but if the opportunity and the scope of the problem in fire retardant research is significant enough, I think this could work. And that leads me to my last recommendation. Next slide. So, when I think of the IUCRC, another NSF program is called the Engineering Research Center Program, ERC. I am part of a proposal with Ohio State. It's under review now. The topic, I can tell you, is focused exclusively, big goal, reducing our dependence on foreign sources of natural rubber. So guayule that can be grown in the Southwest US, dandelions, things like that. A point I want to make is that is a big, high-level challenge. It has not only technical milestones and pretty ambitious goals in terms of bringing a domestic rubber supply to the forefront, but it also has socio-political consequences, and it's a big topic with big goals. And if I think about IUCRCs and ERCs and other kinds of programs, the goals tend to be very large in scope and globally important. Here's a short list: access to clean water, renewable energy, affordable housing, better health. So what I want to conclude with is maybe a suggestion about messaging. Can fire retardant research be positioned to have a theme and a scope and a reach and ambitions that parallel something like access to clean water? And a couple of suggestions. So affordable housing and urban infrastructure is a main driver. It's been said, and I've heard this from the Santa Fe Institute, from now until 2050, about 1 million people per week are going to be moving to cities. And that concrete and steel, given the environmental impact, greenhouse gases, energy footprint, need alternatives. And one suggestion, and Roger, you remember introducing me to Mark Goulthorpe, professor of architecture at MIT. Mark and colleagues are proposing thermoplastic composite housing as a way to address this. Nothing fancy. Polyolefins, polyesters, nylons, glass fiber reinforced. And gosh, I don't think I need to say this, but I will. There's a concern about flammability, right? So um, also better health for all. Uh, Additives that are more environmentally friendly, less toxic. You saw the my reference to Alex Morgan's paper. There's a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions, negative press. So can we, the collective we, build on these? So I'm with that, I'm going to conclude. One more slide. I want to thank Roger for both suggesting this topic and the opportunity to present. Also, Alex Morgan, I talked to him last week. Thanks to Debbie and Jose. And I look forward to not only a good, a lively Q&A, but also opportunities to continue the conversation. And I hope my remarks were useful and can stimulate some further thinking. So thanks again.